All right, everybody, time for our next lesson about clocks. Today we're working on lesson 19, and we're going to start learning about where the hands are positioned, okay? So remember I told you yesterday, I kind of gave you a sneak peek that there's a long hand and a short hand on every clock. The long hand for today's lesson, we're gonna pretend it's always pointing at the 12. So the only hand we have to look at is this little hand and where it is pointing on the clock. Okay, so easy peasy. Wherever you see the hand pointing, you say that number, 1, and then say the word o'clock, 1 o'clock. So if I go down here, it's pointing at the 4, so it's 4 o'clock. If I point to this number, it's gonna be 9 o'clock. If I point to this number, 10 o'clock. If I even point it straight up with the 12 at the top, we say that that's 12 o'clock, okay? So we're gonna just, they didn't even draw the big hand because we're just only paying attention to the little hand today. And if you really wanna know, that means that we're just gonna pretend that the long hand is always pointing at the 12. And all we need to do is look at where the little hand is pointing and then say o'clock. So let's look at this. What do you think? What time is it saying? 8 o'clock, because the little hand is pointing over here at the 8. Perfect. All right, this is what lesson 19 looks like. And I'm actually gonna zoom in a little bit because it's kind of hard to see where those hands are pointing from that far away. Okay, so remember I told you that we're just looking at the little hand today. We're not even gonna pay attention to the big hand. Don't worry about it, okay? So if we're looking at where this is pointing, this little hand is pointing to the 2. So it's 2, and then they wrote the word o'clock for you. Let's look at this one. This little hand is pointing to the 5. So it's 5 o'clock. Let's look at this one. This little hand is pointing to the 9. So it is 9 o'clock. Last one, the little hand is pointing straight up at the 12. So it is 12 o'clock. Easy peasy. Awesome. So you're gonna do the same thing on the back. Oh dear. Nope, I need to teach you a little bit more. Okay, so looking back over here at my clock, remember we're only gonna be looking at the little hand. So the little hand only moves one way around the clock. It only moves towards as the numbers get bigger. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It only goes this way. It never goes backwards, okay? So now that we know if it's pointing at the number, then we just say that number, o'clock. But what happens, do you think, if it's in the middle? That is pointing between the 2 and the 3. So do you think it's 2 o'clock? Do you think it's 3 o'clock? So what we're talking about today on the back side of the paper is that this is going to be a little bit after 2 o'clock, and a little bit before 3 o'clock. It's in the middle, right? So it's after 2, but it's before the 3. So let's look again. If I put it here. Okay, so here's the 6. It's not pointing at the 6. Here's the 7. It's not pointing at the 7. It's in the middle. So it's going to be after 6, but it's going to be before 7. Good job. Or what if it's pointing, watch, this is a little bit tricky. It's pointing right there. It's almost pointing at the 9, right? And it's way past the 8. It's almost up to the 9. So sometimes when things are super close, like if it was pointing just a tiny bit more up, then that would definitely be 9 o'clock. But since it's really just very, very close, we could say it's almost or about 9 o'clock. It's almost 9 o'clock or it's about 9 o'clock. It's really close, right? So now let's go back to our paper again and look at the back side and talk about before and after the hours. Okay, so I've zoomed in again on the back, And at the top here, they give us a couple examples. So this little hand on this one is pointing, if I just follow those lines straight out, look, it's not quite at the 5, it's not quite at the 6. So we could say that it is after 5 o'clock, right? Because it's moved past the 5, but it's not quite to the 6 yet. So it's before the 6. And these words right here say before 6 o'clock. Okay, this one, the 6 is pointing at, or the hand is pointing at the 6, but it's not straight at it. It's actually kind of a little bit to the side, but still is very, very, very close. So we could say it's about 6 o'clock. And this one, it is pointing in between the 6 and the 7. So if we're looking at, we could say that it's after 6 o'clock because it's moved past it, but it's not to the 7 yet, so it's before 7. So they're saying this one is after 6 o'clock. Okay. Let's look at this one together. Where is this pointing? It's pointing almost exactly right at the 2. So I'm going to say that it is right about 2 o'clock. So this word says before, this one says about, and this one says after. And they all say 2 o'clock. So I'm going to say that it's about 2 o'clock. It's really close to 2 o'clock. It might be a tiny, tiny bit before 2 o'clock, but it's really, really close. So I'm just going to say it's about 2 o'clock. Let's look at this one. Okay, these are all talking about 7 o'clock. Right here, it's pointing in between the 7 and the 8. So I'm going to look, and remember my hand goes this way. So it's after the 7, but it is before the 8. So we need to find one of these answers that says after 7 or before 8 o'clock. So this one says before 7 o'clock. That would mean that it was way back here. It hadn't touched the 7 yet, but it's moved past it. So it's definitely not that one. Is it about 7 o'clock? That means it would be pointing right at the 7. Not yet. Or, I mean, it was before, but it's not right now. So I think that the best answer is after 7 o'clock, because as the clock moves around, it's gone past the 7, so it's after. After 7 o'clock. Let's look at this one. If I look at the arrow, it's kind of going right there. So it's in between the 10 and the 11. So as the clock hand has moved around, it's gone all the way past all these numbers, and it's gone past the 10 o'clock. So it's after 10 o'clock, but it hasn't touched the 11 yet. So it's before 11 o'clock. So we need to look at these. They all say 11 o'clock. So is it before 11 o'clock? Is it right about 11 o'clock? Or is it after 11 o'clock? Well, as it goes around, it's already past the 10, but it hasn't hit the 11 yet. I think it's before 11. It's before 11 o'clock. All right. That lesson started really, really easy and then got a little tiny bit tricky, but the more you practice it, the more you look at the clocks and you decide whether it's between the two numbers or it's right at that number, the easier it'll get. Just remember that it always goes around the same direction. The little hand can only move one way. It can only move towards the numbers that are getting bigger until it hits the 12. Oops, sorry. And then it moves towards the little numbers that get bigger, and then it gets to 12. And then it starts all over and the numbers get bigger, and then it gets, then it gets back to the 12. So the most important thing is that you remember it only goes one way. If it's in between here, it's gonna be before 1 o'clock. If it's here, it's gonna be before 2 o'clock because it hasn't touched it yet. It's before it happens. All right, keep practicing, keep looking at all the clocks around your house, try and decide what numbers it's pointing at. And practice, 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 practice. Tomorrow's lesson is much easier. Don't worry about it. All right, I will see you guys then. Bye.